The Westing Game by Ellen Raskin. Day 2. The next heir, short and round, entered timidly, her lips pressed together in an impish smile that curved up to what must be pointed ears under her straight-cut, steely hair. "Hello, Mrs. Baumbach," Angela said. "I don't think you've met my fiancé, Denton Dear." "You're a lucky man, Mr. Dear." "Dr. Dear," Mrs. Wexler corrected her, puzzled by the dressmaker's presence. "Of course I am so sorry." Sensing that she was unwelcome at this end of the room, Flora Baumbach walked on. "Hi. Mind if I sit next to you? I promised not to pull your braid." "That's okay." Turtle was hunched over the table, her small chin resting between her crossed arms. From there she could see everything except the coffin. Grace Wexler dismissed the next heir with an audible tongue click. That distasteful little man didn't even have the sense to remove his silly aviator's cap. Tisk! And what in heaven's name was he doing here? The delivery boy shouted, "Let's give a cheer. Otis Amber's here." Turtle laughed. Flora Baumbach tittered, and Grace Wexler again clicked her tongue. Tisk! Doug Who and his father entered silently, but Sandy gave a hearty hi and a cheery wave. He wore his doorman's uniform, but unlike Otis Amber, carried his hat in his hand. Grace Windsor Wexler was no longer surprised at the odd assortment of heirs. Household workers all, or formerly employees, she decided. The rich always reward servants in their wills, and her Uncle Sam was a generous man. "Aren't your parents coming?" she asked the older Theodoricus boy as he wheeled his brother into the library. "They weren't invited," Theo replied. "It's so Chris announced. "What did he say?" "He said it's snowing," Theo and Flora Baumbach explained at the same time. The heirs watched helplessly as the invalid's thin frame was suddenly torn and twisted by convulsions. Only the dressmaker rushed to his side. I know, she simpered. "You were trying to tell us about the itsy-bitsy snowflakes." Theo moved her away. "My brother is not an infant, and he's not retarded. So please, no more baby talk." Blinking away tears, Flora Baumbach returned to her seat, the elfin smile still painted on her pained face. Some stared at the afflicted child with morbid fascination, but most turned away. They didn't want to see. "Pyramidal tract involvement," Denton Dear whispered, trying to impress Angela with his diagnosis. Angela, her face a mirror to the boy's suffering, grabbed her tapestry bag and hurried out of the room. "Why, hello, Judge Ford." Proud of her liberalism, Grace Windsor Wexler stood and leaned over the table to shake the black woman's hand. She must be here in some legal capacity, or maybe her mother was a household maid, but of one thing Grace was certain. J.J. Ford could no more be related to Sam W. Westing than Mr. Who. "Can we get started?" Mr. Who asked, hoping to get back in time to watch the football game on television. "I must return to my restaurant," he announced loudly. "Sunday is our busy day, but we are still accepting reservations. Shin Hu's restaurant on the 5th floor of Sunset Towers, specializing in—" Doug tugged at his father's sleeve. "Not here, Dad. Not in front of the dead." "What dead?" Mr. Who had not noticed the open coffin. Now he did. "Oh!" The lawyer explained that several heirs had not yet arrived. "My wife is not coming," said Mr. Who. Grace said, "Dr. Wexler was called away on an emergency operation." "An emergency Packers game in Green Bay," Turtle confided to Flora Baumbach, who scrunched up her shoulders and tittered behind a plump hand. "Then we are still waiting for one. No, 2 more," the lawyer said, fumbling with his papers, his hands shaking under the strict scrutiny of the judge. Judge Ford had recognized E.J. Plum. Several months ago, he had argued before her court, bumbling to the point of incompetence. Why, she wondered, was a young, inexperienced attorney chosen to handle an estate of such importance? Come to think of it, what was she doing here? Curiosity? Perhaps. But what about the rest of them? The other tenants of Sunset Towers? Don't anticipate Josie Joe. Wait for Sam Westing to make the first move. Light footsteps were heard in the hall. It was only Angela, who blushed and, hugging her tapestry bag close to her body, returned to her seat. The heirs waited. Some chatted with neighbors, some looked up at the gilt ceiling, some studied the pattern of the oriental rug. Judge Ford stared at the table, at Theodoricus's hand, a calloused hand, a healed cut, the shiny slash of a burn on the deep bronze skin. She lowered her hands to her lap. His Greek skin was darker than her black skin. Thump, thump, thump. Someone was coming, or were there 2 of them? In came Crow. Eyes lowered, without a word, she sat down next to Otis Amber. A dark cloud passed from her face as she eased off a tight shoe under the table. Thump, thump, thump. The last expected heir arrived. Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm late. I haven't quite adjusted to this. Sidel Pulaski waved a gaily painted crutch in the air, tottered, and set it down quickly with another thump. This crutch. Crutch. What a horrible word. But I guess I'll have to get used to it. She pursed her bright red mouth, painted to a fullness beyond the narrow line of her lips, trying to suppress a smile of triumph. Everyone was staring. She knew they would notice. What happened, Pulaski? Otis Amber asked. Did you pull Turtle's braid again? More likely she visited Wexler, the foot butcher, Sandy suggested. Sidel was pleased to hear someone come to her defense with a loud click of the tongue. She had not even blinked a false eyelash at those offensive remarks. Poise, they call it. It's really nothing, she reported bravely, just some sort of wasting disease. But pity me not. I shall live out my remaining time enjoying each precious day to the full. Thump, thump, thump. The secretary kept to the side of the room, avoiding the oriental rug that might cushion the thump of her purple-striped crutch as she made her way to the end of the table. Her exaggerated hips were even more exaggerated by the wavy stripes of white on her purple dress. Purple waves, Turtle thought. Denton Deer almost fell off his chair, leaning back to follow this most unusual case. First, she favored her left leg, then her right leg. What is it? Whispered Mrs. Wexler. The intern did not have the least notion, but he had to say something. Traveling sporadic myositis, he pronounced quickly and glanced at Angela. Her eyes remained on her embroidery. The lawyer stood, documents in hand, and cleared his throat several times. Grace Windsor Wexler, her chin tilted in the regal poise of an heiress, gave him her full attention. 1 minute, please. Sidel Pulaski propped her purple and white striped crutch against the table, then removed the shorthand pad and pencil from her handbag. Thank you for waiting. You may begin. Chapter 6. The Westing Will. My name, the young lawyer began, is Edgar Jennings Plum. Although I never had the honor of meeting Samuel W. Westing, for some reason yet unexplained, I was appointed executor of this will found adjacent to the body of the deceased. Let me assure you that I have examined the documents at hand as thoroughly as possible in the short time available. I have verified the signatures to be those of Samuel W. Westing and his two witnesses, Julian R. Eastman, President and Chief Executive Officer of Westing Paper Products Corporation, and Sidney Sykes, M.D., coroner of Westing County. Although the will you are about to hear may seem eccentric, I pledge my good name and reputation on its legality. Breathless with suspense, the heirs stared pop-eyed at Edgar Jennings Plum, who now coughed into his fist, now cleared his throat, now rustled papers, and now at last began to read aloud from the Westing will. I, Samuel W. Westing, resident of Westing County in the fair state of Wisconsin in the great and glorious United States of America, being of sound mind and memory, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. First, I return to live among my friends and my enemies. I came home to seek my heir, aware that in doing so I faced death, and so I did. Today I have gathered together my nearest and dearest, my 16 nieces and nephews. What? Sit down, Grace Windsor Wexler. The lawyer stammered an apology to the still standing woman. I was only reading, those are Mr. Westing's words. If it's any comfort to you, Mrs. Wexler, Judge Ford remarked with biting dignity, I am just as appalled by our purported relationship. Oh, I didn't mean, hey, Angela, Turtle called the length of the table. It's against the law to marry that doctor-to-be. He's your cousin. Dr. Denton Deer, patting Angela's hand in his best bedside manner, pricked his finger on her embroidery needle. I can't tell who said what with this chatter, Sidel Pulaski complained. Would you read that again, Mr. Lawyer? Today I have gathered together my nearest and dearest, my 16 nieces and nephews. Sit down, Grace Windsor Wexler, to view the body of your Uncle Sam for the last time. Tomorrow its ashes will be scattered to the four winds. Second, I am Samuel W. Westing, hereby swear that I did not die of natural causes. My life was taken from me by one of you. Oh, Chris's arms flailed the air. His accusing finger pointed here, no, there. It pointed everywhere. His exaggerated motions acted out the confusion shared by all but one of the heirs as they looked around at the stunned faces of their neighbors to confirm what they heard. Rereading her notes, Sidel Pulaski now uttered a small shriek. Eek! Murder? Does that mean Westing was murdered? Sandy asked the air on his left. Crow turned away in silence. Does that mean murder? He asked the air on his right. Murder? Of course it means murder. Sam Westing was murdered, Mr. Who replied. Either that or he ate once, too often, in the Greasy Spoon coffee shop. Theo resented Who's slur on the family business. It was murder, all right, and the will says the murderer is one of us. He glared at the restaurant owner. Have the police been notified of the charge? Judge Ford asked the lawyer. Plum shrugged. I presume they will perform an autopsy. The judge shook her head in dismay. Autopsy? Westing was already embalmed. Tomorrow he would be cremated. The police are helpless. The culprit is far too cunning to be apprehended for this dastardly deed. Oh my, Flora Bamba clapped a hand to her mouth on hearing dastardly. First murder, now a swear word. I alone know the name. Now it is up to you. Cast out the sinner, let the guilty rise and confess. Amen, said Crow. Third, who among you is worthy to be the Westing heir? Help me, my soul shall roam restlessly until that one is found. The estate is at the crossroads. The heir who wins the windfall will be the one who finds the ashes, the doorman shouted. Some tittered to relieve the unbearable tension. Some cast him a reproachable glance. Grace Wexler clicked her tongue, and Sidel Pulaski shushed. It was just a joke, Sandy tried to explain. You know, ashes scattered to the winds. So the one who wins the windfall gets... Oh, never mind. Fourth, hail to thee, O land of opportunity. You have made me the son of poor immigrants, rich, powerful, and respected. So take stock in America, my heirs, and sing in praise of this generous land. You, too, may strike it rich, who dares to play the Westing game. Game? What game? Turtle wanted to know. No matter, Judge Ford said, rising to leave. This is either a cruel trick or the man was insane. Fifth, sit down, Your Honor, and read the letter this brilliant young attorney will now hand over to you. It was uncanny. Several heads turned toward the coffin, but Westing's eyes were shut forever. The brilliant young attorney fumbled through a stack of papers, felt his pockets, and finally found the letter in his briefcase. Aren't you going to open it? Theo asked as the judge resumed her seat and put the sealed envelope in her purse. No need. Sam Westing could afford to buy a dozen certificates of sanity. The poor are crazy, the rich just eccentric, Mr. Who said bitterly. Are you implying, sir, that the medical profession is corrupt? Denton Deer challenged. Shush. Sixth, before we proceed to the game room, there will be 1 minute of silent prayer for your good old Uncle Sam. Flora Blomбach was the only heir to cry. Crow was the only one to pray. By the time Sidel Pulaski could assume a pose of reverence, the minute was up. Chapter 7. The Westing Game. 8 card tables, each with 2 chairs, were arranged in the center of the game room. Sports equipment lined the walls. Hunting rifles, ping-pong paddles, billiard cues, a full rack, Turtle noticed. Bows and arrows, darts, bats, rackets, all looked like possible murder weapons to the giddy heirs who were waiting to be told where to sit. Theo wandered over to the chess table to admire the finely carved pieces. Someone had moved a white pawn. Okay, he'll play along. Theo defended the opening with a black knight. On hearing Plum's throat-clearing signal, Sidel Pulaski switched the painted crutch to her left armpit and flipped to a fresh page in her notebook. Shush! 7th. And now, dear friends, relatives, and enemies, the Westing game begins. The rules are simple. Number of players, 16, divided into 8 pairs. Each pair will receive $10,000. Each pair will receive 1 set of clues. Forfeits. If any player drops out, the partner must leave the game. The pair must return the money. Absent pairs forfeit the $10,000. Their clues will be held until the next session. Players will be given 2 days' notice of the next session. Each pair may then give 1 answer. Object of the game? To win. Did you hear that, Crow? Otis Amber said excitedly. $10,000. Now aren't you glad I made you come, huh? Shh, that was Turtle. The object of the game was to win, and she wanted to win. 8th. The heirs will now be paired. When called, go to the assigned table. Your name and position will be read as assigned on the receipt. It will be up to the other players to discover who you really are. Madame Sungmin Hu, cook. Jake Wexler, standing or sitting when not lying down. Grace Wexler did not understand her husband's joke about position. Mr. Who did, but he was in no mood for humor. $10,000 was at stake. Both pleaded for their absent spouses. Emergency operation. My wife doesn't even speak English. To no avail. Table 1 remained empty and moneyless. Number 2. Turtle Wexler, witch. Flora Bombach, dressmaker. Sighs of relief greeted the naming of Turtle's partner, but Flora Bombach seemed pleased to be paired with the kicking witch. At least her face was still puckered in that elfin grin. Turtle had hoped for one of the high school seniors, especially Doug Who. Group 3. Christos Theodorkis, birdwatcher. Dr. Denton Deere, intern, St. Joseph's Hospital, Department of Plastic Surgery. Theo protested. He and his brother should be paired together. Chris was his responsibility. Mrs. Wexler protested. Dr. D should be paired with his bride-to-be. Dr. Denton Deere protested, but silently. If this had been arranged for free medical advice, they, whoever they are, were mistaken. He was a busy man. He was a doctor, not a nursemaid. But Chris was delighted to be part of the outside world. He would tell the intern about the person who limped into the Westinghouse. Maybe that was the murderer, unless his partner was the murderer. This was really exciting, even better than television. Group 4. Alexander McSuthers, doorman. J.J. Ford, judge. Appellate Division of the State Supreme Court. The heirs watched the jaunty doorman pull out a chair for the judge. It had never occurred to them that Sandy was a nickname for Alexander. But that couldn't be what Sam Westing meant by, it'll be up to the other players to discover who you really are. A critic. The judge did not return the chip-toothed smile. Doorman, he called himself. And the others had signed simple things too. Cook, dressmaker. The podiatrist had even made fun of his position. She was seen as pompous as that intern, putting on airs with that title. Well, she had worked hard to get where she was. Why shouldn't she be proud of it? She was no token. Her record was faultless. Watch it. Josie Joe Westing's getting to you already, and the game has barely begun. Group 5. Grace Windsor Wexler, heiress. James Shin Hu, restaurateur. Grace Windsor Wexler ignored the snickers. If she was not the heiress now, she would be soon. What with her clues, Angela's clues, Turtle's clues, Denton's clues, and all the clues of Mr. Who's obedient son. $5,000 lost. Oh well, who needs Jake anyway? She'd win on her own. You'll be happy to know that Mr. Westing was really my Uncle Sam, she whispered to her partner. So what, thought Mr. Who. $5,000 lost? He should have told his wife about it this meeting, dragged her along. Sam Westing the louse has cheated him again. Whoever killed him deserves a medal. Group 6. Berth Erica Crow, Good Salvation Soup Kitchen. Otis Amber, deliverer. The delivery boy danced to Mary J., but Crow, her sore foot squeezed back into her tight shoe, headed for table 6 with a grim face. Why were they watching her? Did they think she killed Wendy? Could the guilty know her guilt? Repent. Crow lips. Chris Theodorkis noted. Theo Theodorkis, brother. Doug Who, first in all-state high school mile run. They slapped hands and Doug jogged to the table 7. Theo moved more slowly. Passing the chessboard, he saw that White had made a second move. He countered with a black pawn. Maybe he should not have written brother. But, like it or not, that was his position in life. Chris was smiling at him in pure sweetness, which made Theo feel even guiltier about his arrangement. I guess that makes us partners, Miss Pulaski, Angela said. Pardon me, did you say something? Chapter 8. Sadell Pulaski, Secretary to the President. Angela Wexler, none. Angela stepped tentatively behind the secretary, not knowing whether to ignore her disability or to take her arm. At least her crippled partner could not be the murderer, but it was embarrassing being paired with such a... No, she shouldn't feel that way. It was her mother who was upset. She could feel the indignant anger without having to look at Grace. Her perfect daughter was paired with a freak. What good luck, the hobbling Sadell Pulaski thought. Now she would really be noticed. with such a pretty young thing for a partner. They might even invite her to the wedding. She'd paint a crutch white with little pink nosegays. Denton Deer was troubled. What in the world did Angela mean by none? Once again, Edgar Jennings Plum cleared his throat. Nasal drip, Denton Deer whispered, confiding the latest diagnosis to his partner. Chris giggled. What's the crippled kid so happy about? The intern wondered. Ninth. Money. Each pair in attendance will now receive a check for the sum of $10,000. The check cannot be cashed without the signatures of both partners. Spend it wisely or go for broke. May God thy good gold refine. A piercing shriek suddenly reminded the Westing heirs of murder. While passing out the checks, the lawyer had stepped on Crow's sore foot. Is this legal, Judge? Sandy asked. It is not only legal, Mr. McSuthers, Judge Ford replied, signing her name to the check and handing it to the doorman. It is a shrewd way to keep everyone playing the game. 10th. Each pair in attendance will now receive an envelope containing a set of clues. No two sets of clues are alike. It is not what you have, it's what you don't have that counts. Placing the last of the envelopes on table 8, the young lawyer smiled at Angela. Sidel Pulaski smiled back. This makes no sense, Denton Deer complained. 4 clues typed out on cut squares of Westing super-strength paper towels lay on the table before him, arms and elbows at odds, with fingers fanned. Chris tried to rearrange the words in some grammatical, if not logical, order. Hey, watch it, the intern shouted as one clue wafted to the floor. Flora Baumbach leapt from her chair at the next table, picked up the small square, and set it face down before the trembling youngster. I didn't see it, she announced loudly. I really didn't see it, she repeated under the questioning gaze of her partner. Turtle Wexler. Which? The players protected their clues more carefully now. Hunched over the tables, they moved the paper squares this way and that way, mumbling and grumbling. The murderer's name must be there somewhere. Only one pair had not yet seen their clues. At table 8, Sidel Pulaski placed one hand on an envelope, raised a finger to her lips, and tilted her head toward the other heirs. Just watch and listen, she meant. She may be odd, but she's smart, Angela thought. Since each pair had a different set of clues, they would watch and listen for clues to their clues. He. The delivery boy slapped his partner on the back. That's us, old pal. Queen Crow and King Amber. What's this? On or no? Doug Who turned a clue upside down, then read right side up again. Theo jabbed an elbow in his ribs and turned to see if anyone had heard. Angela lowered her eyes in time. J.J. Ford crumpled the clues in her fist and rose in anger. I'm sorry, Mr. McSuthers. Playing a pawn in this foolish game is one thing, but to be insulted with minstrel show dialect. Please, Judge. Please don't quit on me, Sandy pleaded. I'd have to give back all that money. It would break my wife's heart. And my poor kids. Judge Ford regarded the desperate doorman without pity. So many had begged before her bench. Please, Judge, I lost my job, my pension. I can't fight no more. Don't quit just because of some nonsensical words. Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me. She had chanted that as a child. Words did hurt. But she was no longer a child, nor a hanging judge. And there was always the chance. All right, Mr. McSuthers. I'll stay. J.J. Ford sat down, her eyes sparkling with wickedness, and will play the game just as Sam Westing would have played it. Mean. Flora Baumbach squeezed her eyes together and screwed up her face. She was concentrating. Haven't you memorized them yet? Turtle didn't like the way Otis Amber's scrawny neck was swiveling high out of his collar. And what was Angela staring at? Yes, I think so, the dressmaker replied, but I can't make heads or tails of them. They make perfect sense to me, Turtle said. One by one, she put the clues in her mouth, chewed, and swallowed them. Gibberish, Mr. Who muttered. Grace Windsor Wexler agreed. Excuse me, Mr. Plum, but what are these clues to? I mean, exactly, what are we supposed to find? Purple waves, Sandy joked with a wink at Turtle. Mr. Wexler uttered a cry of recognition and changed the order of 2 of her clues. It's still gibberish, Mr. Who complained. Other players pressed the lawyer for information. Ed Plum only shrugged. Then could you please give us copies of the will? A copy will be on file, Judge Ford began. I'm afraid not yet, Your Honor, the lawyer said. The will not. The will not. I mean, the will. He paused and tried again. The will not be filed until the first of the year. My instructions specifically state that no heir is allowed to see any of the documents until the game is over. No copy? That's not fair. But wait. They did have a copy. A shorthand copy. Sidel Pulaski had plenty of attention now. She smiled back at the friendly faces, revealing a lipstick stain on her front teeth. Isn't there some sort of last statement? Sandy asked Plum. I mean, like the intern says, nothing makes any sense? 11th. Senseless, you say. Death is senseless, yet makes way for the living. Life, too, is senseless, unless you know who you are, what you want, and which way the wind blows. So on with the game. The solution is simple, if you know whom you are looking for. But heirs beware, beware. Some are not who they say they are, and some are not who they seem to be. Whoever you are, it's time to go home. God bless you all, and remember this. Buy Westing Paper Products. Chapter 8. The Paired Heirs. During the night, 4 bomb-box itsy-bitsy snowflakes raged into a blizzard. The tenants of Sunset Towers awoke from clue-chasing, blood-dripping dreams, bound in twisted sheets and imprisoned by 15-foot snowdrifts. No telephones, no electricity. Snowbound with a murderer. The slow procession looked like some ancient mysterious rite as partner sought out partner on the windowless snares. In silent pairs threaded through the corridors in the flickering light of crooked, colored-striped candles, product of Turtle's stint at summer camp. These handmade candles are both practical and romantic, she said, peddling her wares from apartment door to frighten tenants at 7 in the morning. Oh, it's only Turtle. And the colored stripes tell time, which is very handy if your electric clock stopped. Each stripe burns exactly 1/2 hour, more or less. 12 stripes, 6 hours. How much? Not wishing to take advantage of this emergency, I reduced the price to only $5 each. Outrageous. Even more so when the electricity came on 2 hours after her last sale. Sorry, no refunds, Turtle said. No matter. What was $5 to heirs of an estate worth $200 million? Clues they had to work on, those clues. Behind closed doors, whisper, someone may be listening. Not all the heirs were huddled in plotting, puzzling, solving pairs. Jake Wexler had retreated to his office after a long and loud argument with his wife. He sure could have used half of that $10,000, but he wouldn't admit it. Not to her. The forfeited money upset her more than the murder of her uncle, if he was her uncle. 5 floors above, Jake's partner stood before the restaurant's front window staring at the froth of the angry lake, and beyond, no one had bothered to tell Madame Who about the Westing game. Other players were snowbound elsewhere. Denton Deere in the hospital, Sandy at home. No one gave a thought to where Otis Amber or Crow might be, but Sidel Pulaski was there, thumping her crutch against the baseboards as she limped through the carpeted halls on the arm of her pretty partner. Not one, but 7 tenants had invited her to morning coffee or afternoon tea. Murderer or not, they had to see Pulaski's copy of that will. 3 lumps, please. Angela's drinks it black. Your health? Thank the Lord I'm still able to hobble about. Your job? I was private secretary to the president of Schultz Sausages. Poor Mr. Schultz. I don't know how he'll manage without me. Your shorthand notes? Thank you for the refreshments. I must hurry back for my medication. Come, Angela. One heir had not invited them in, but that didn't stop Sidel Pulaski from barging into apartment 2D. Hi, Chris. Just thought we'd pop in to see how you're doing. Don't be scared. I'm not the murderer. Angela is not the murderer, and we don't think you are the murderer. Mind if I sit down? The secretary toppled into a chair next to the invalid before he could reply. Here, I stole a macaroon for you. It's so sticky you'll be tasting it all day. I must have 6 strands of coconut between my upper molars. Chris took the cookie. Just look at that smile. It could break your heart. Angela wished her partner had not said that. It seemed so insensitive, so crude, but at least Sidel was talking to him, which is more than she was able to do. Angela, the fortunate one, standing like a dummy. I know Denton wants to work on the clues with you. He's snowbound, too. You're pretty. How did pretty come out? He meant to say nice. Chris bent his curly head over the geography book in his lap. She wasn't laughing at him. It was all right to ask her because she was going to marry his partner. What Argerens. Angela did not understand. Chris fanned the pages of the book to a picture of a wheat field. Grains. Oh, grains. You want to know the names of some grains. Let's see. There's wheat, rye, corn, barley, oats. Oats! Angela thought the boy was going into a fit, but he was only repeating her last word, oats. Sidel was puffing her warm breath on the window and wiping a frosted area clean with her sleeve. There, now you'll be able to watch the birds again. Anything else we can do for you, young man? Chris nodded. Read me shorthand notes. The pretty lady and the funny lady moved quickly out the door. One limped, but it was pretended limp. He could tell. Not like the limper on the Westinghouse lawn. Oats. Chris closed his eyes to the picture, the clues. 4, plain, grain, shed. Grain equals oats, Otis, amber. 4 plus D from shed, Ford. But neither the delivery boy nor the judge limped, and he still hadn't figured out she or plain. He'd have to wait for Denton Deer. Denton Deer was smart. He was a doctor. Chris raised his binoculars to the cliff. Wind-blown drifts buttressed the house. Something moved on the second floor. A hand holding back the edge of a drape. Slowly the heavy drape fell back against the window. Westinghouse was snowbound too, and somebody was snowbound in it. Only one of the players thought the clues told how the $10,000 check was to be spent. Take stock in America, the will said. Go for broke, the will said. In the stock market, Turtle said, and whoever makes the most money wins it all. The whole $200 million. Their clues. C, mountain, am, O. Stood for symbols of 3 corporations listed on the stock exchange. C, S-E-A, M-T, the abbreviation for mountain, A-M-O. But am and O are separate clues, Flora Bombach said, to confuse us. But what about the murderer? I thought we were supposed to find the name of the murderer. To put us off the track. If the police suspected murder, she'd be in jail by now. Her fingerprints were all over everything in the Westinghouse, including the corpse. You don't really think one of us could have killed a living, breathing human being in cold blood, do you, Mrs. Bombach? Do you? Turtle did. But the dressmaker was a cream puff. Don't you look at me like that, Turtle Wexler. You know very well I could never think such a thing. I must have misunderstood. Oh, my. I just wish Miss Pulaski had shown us her copy of the will. Turtle returned to her calculations, multiplying numbers of share times price, adding a broker's commission, trying to total the sums up to the $10,000 they had to spend. Flora Bombach may have been wrong about the murder, but she was not convinced of Turtle's plan. What about buy Westing paper products? I'm sure that was in the will. Great, Turtle exclaimed. We'll do just that. We'll add WPP to the list of stocks we're going to buy. Flora Bombach had watched enough television commercials to know that buy Westing paper products meant that as soon as she could get to the market, she'd buy all the Westing products on the shelf. Still, it felt good having a child around again. She'd play along gladly. You know, Turtle, you may be right about putting our money in the stock market. I remember the will said, May God thy gold refine. That must be from the Bible. Shakespeare, Turtle replied. All quotations were either from the Bible or Shakespeare. Mr. Who moved aside a full ashtray with a show of distaste and rearranged the clues. Purple fruited makes more sense. Grace Wexler looked across the restaurant to the lone figure at the window. Are you sure your wife doesn't understand English? I mean, after living here so long? That's my second wife. She came over from Hong Kong 2 years ago. She does look young, but it's so hard to tell ages of people of the Oriental persuasion, Grace said. Why was he glaring at her like that? Your wife is quite lovely, you know. So doll-like and inscrutable. Who bit off half a chocolate bar? He had enough problems with the empty restaurant, a lazy son, and his nagging ulcer. Now he had to put up with this bigot. Grace lit another cigarette and rearranged the clues to read Purple Waves. You heard that doorman say Purple Waves. It must mean something. And that ghastly secretary was wearing a dress with purple waves last night, not to mention her crutch. You should not speak unkindly of those less fortunate than you, Who said. You're quite right, Grace replied. I thought the poor thing handled her infirmity with great courage. Traveling Mimosa, my future son-in-law, says he's a doctor, you know. Anyhow, Pulaski couldn't possibly be the murderer, not the way she gimps around. Besides, how could my Uncle Sam know she'd wear purple waves to his funeral? Who waved a cigarette smoke from his face? The murderer had to have a motive. How about this? A niece murders their rich uncle to inherit his money. Good sport that she was. Grace tossed back her head and uttered an amused, "Ha ha ha." Not that I care, who said. That cheating moneybags got what he deserves. What's the matter? Look, Grace pointed to the clues. Fruited purple waves 4C. 4C. The murderer lives in apartment 4C. I live in 4C, who barked. If Sam Westing wanted to say 4C, he would have written number 4, letter C. SEA means sea, like what a turtle swims in. Come now, Mr. Who. We are both being silly. Have you spoken to your son about his clues? Some son. If you can catch him, you can ask him. Who stuffed the rest of the candy bar in his mouth? In some business I've got here, everybody orders up, nobody orders down. That coffee shop is sending me to the poorhouse, and your Angela and that Pulaski woman, they didn't show us the will. They didn't give us their clues. They didn't pay for 3 cups of jasmine tea and 6 almond cookies, and you smoke too much. And you eat too much. Grace threw her coin purse on the table and stormed out of the restaurant. Change, that's all he'll get from her. He'd have to beg on his knees before she'd sign Grace Wexler on the $10,000 check. That madman, some pair they made. Attila the Hun and Gracie the Useless. Gracie Windclapple Wexler, heir pretender, pretentious heir. First the money. They signed their names to the check. Half would go into Doug Who's savings account, half would go to Theo's parents. Next, the clues. His, N. On, to, the, 4. Maybe the numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, Theo guessed. I still say on is no. The bored track star said. He clasped his hands behind his head, leaned back in the coffee shop booth, and stretched his long legs onto the opposite bench. And no is what we got. No real clues, no leads, no will. After 3 cups of coffee, 2 pastries, and a bowl of rice pudding with cream, Sidel Pulaski had offered nothing in return. Theo refused to give up. Are you sure you didn't see anything unusual at the Westing house that night? I didn't kill Westing, if that's what you mean. And the only unusual thing I saw was Turtle Wexler. I think the pest is madly in love with me. How's that for luck? Get serious, Doug. One of the heirs is a murderer. We could all get killed. Just because somebody zapped the old man doesn't mean he's going to kill again. Dad says. Doug paused. His father's comment about awarding a medal to the murderer might be incriminating. Theo tried another tack. I was playing chess with somebody in the game room last night. Who? That's what's strange. I don't know who. We'll have to find out which one of the heirs plays chess. Since when is chess playing evidence for murder? Well, it's something to go on, Theo replied. And another thing. The will said no 2 sets of clues are alike. Maybe all the clues put together make one message, a message that points to the murderer. Somehow or other, we'll have to get the heirs to pool the clues. Oh, sure, the killer can't wait to hand over the clues that will hang him. Doug rose. Snowbound or not, he had to stay in shape for the track meet. For the rest of the day, he jogged through the hallways and up and down stairs, scaring the nervous tenants half out of their wits.